Good morning and welcome back to the Duval 22 podcast. My name is Gus Logue. Today I'm thrilled to be joined by my buddy, the publisher and editor and lead reporter of Jaguars on SI. It is John Shipley. John, welcome back to the show. Welcome back to the crib. Thanks for being here. The Jaguars have won 6 straight games, including their most recent at Mile High, knocking off the number one AFC seed Denver Broncos. Pretty good for a small market team, I'd say. But let's riff through some just takeaways from the game, John. But first of all, it's good to see your face. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, it's good to see your face too. Thank you. You don't normally give me that greeting. You're in
It's
the
Christmas
Christmas
time.
mood. Yeah, yeah. Merry Christmas, bud.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
Well, all right,
Christmas.
that's enough with the small talk. Let's talk about.
Yeah, no, I mean it was. I mean, to your small market jab. You just before we get into the game,
It's not my small market jab, by the way. I'm just
I
being.
it is crazy how like Broncos like media, which I know media shouldn't talk bad about media. I know it's whatever, but this was my stance before the game. I've always found Denver media to be relatively insufferable,
Hmm.
and see them kind of retcon the Sean Payton comments, and Sean Payton, himself retconned it. It's like it's not like a secret, like 'cause Sean Payton's one of the biggest jerks in coaching.
For
Like he's
sure. Yeah, he
like
does
for
line
him.
ball.
Like for him to say something extremely passive aggressive when everybody's like, "Oh, well, just go read his comments." I did. They were very passive aggressive out of nowhere. It didn't at all make sense as a compliment. And just to me, I don't understand why coaches say anything that could come off like as a slight, even if you don't mean it, just because giving your opponent bulletin board material, I think never makes any sense. And the
Yeah.
Jaguars have obviously been playing with an edge all season. And I thought one of my biggest takeaways, Gus, was I thought the Jaguars were the more physical team. And like it was a really like physical game, and the Broncos, especially defensively, are a physical team. But I thought the Jaguars flew around and made some really, really physical plays throughout the game against the run, against the pass. I know they only had one sack on Bo Nix, but I felt like they got decent amount of pressure on him. You could tell that they were kind of rolling away from Josh Hines Allen a lot. They already do a lot of bootlegs and stuff with Bo. It's pronounced moving them to the right anyways, but you could tell they made it a focus this week. But I thought the Jaguars, it's kind of been, I think, the theme of the season. We're the more physical team and punch the Broncos in the mouth. And most of the time I've covered the Jaguars, that just has not been the case. Like there's been very few Jaguars teams I've covered, like even like in 2022 and during their 8-3 start in 2023, I never like thought like this was a physical team, and they definitely like this game, especially this run that they're on, really put that into perspective for me. I mean, played one of the more physical teams in football and they outright, beat them down.
Yeah, it was like they definitely passed the test with flying colors, especially when you look back at like the week 6 and 7 games against the Seahawks and the Rams. Like the Rams especially was, I mean, maybe not the worst loss of the season because like the Texans loss was brutal, but like they got smoked the worst against the Rams, and then like probably the Seahawks would be second up. Like they just got out physical in those 2 games, especially up front, like their offensive line against the opponent's defensive line. So it was definitely extremely encouraging to see them like walk into Mile High, be able to out physical a really physical defense. And even if Bo Nix, it might not be like a Super Bowl caliber quarterback or even a franchise caliber quarterback, like I don't know. I think the jury's still out there a little bit. Sean Payton's definitely doing a lot of heavy lifting with that offense. But it's still a good offense because you got Sean Payton, you got explosive and talented weapons, a really good offensive line, especially in the interior. And so like that's a test that they passed like easily. To go back to the Denver stuff real quick, there's definitely something weird in the water, man. I was asked to do like radio show. I was asked to do a radio show. I should have said no, but no, I'm trying to grow the brand. So
What was it, the radio show that I'm thinking?
I probably it was KOA. So, but they asked me on. It was actually a good like interview, a nice little call-in that I did for 20 minutes. But at the very end, they asked me about the swimming pool in the Jacksonville stadium, and I was like, I don't really know anything. I don't go down there. And they just kept bringing it up. They were like laughing about it. They were like hyenas. They were like cackling, kept like pressing me about the swimming pool. I was like, guys, I don't know what to tell you. And then I also noticed on the all 22, like anytime like a quarterback is like throwing the ball, usually the camera will zoom in on like where the ball is going, which makes sense because you want a clearer vision. And it's called all 22 film because you're trying to see all 22 players. But like for the
Here
Broncos,
we
I
go.
feel like it's all 5,000 film because they're trying to show all 5,000 or not 50,000, 100,000, however many fans are in the stadium. They always zoom out on the all 22 and then you can't see anything at the catch point. So I don't know what's going on there. I don't know what's going on with Sean Payton's comments. Trevor Lawrence said it was like the fastest play clock he's ever experienced. And so I don't know. Something's going on up there. Maybe
Yeah,
they won 12 straight home games for a reason.
I got added like a dozen tweets. They were looking for a guest. The whole time I'm like, yo, shut up. Shut up.
Dude,
I
I should
don't
have known because I got reached out to like the night before, so I should have known that they got a bunch of no's, and I was just like the backup to the backup to the
you're
backup.
you're a booty call.
Yeah, exactly.
Um
Gus
my
Logue.
my I'll say it. You know me and my stance on quarterbacks. You know how I feel about Bo Nix. I think he's Gardner Minshew or frosted tips in a good roster.
Mm,
I thought Bo Nix, I'll be frank. Yeah, the Jaguars scored 34 points on their vaunted defense. Obviously, their defense has to carry a lot of that, responsibility. I mean, Jaguars, went 4 or 5 in the red zone for touchdowns. I think scored on their first four. I mean, wildly impressive. Jags were much better on third down, but I thought the difference in this game, and it's not a surprise to like me and you because we know ball. But
yeah.
I think a surprise to like the most casual, like glue eating fans of like football. Trevor Lawrence and Bo Nix was the difference in this game to me. Trevor
Mm,
Lawrence consistently made winning plays. I didn't look at his PFF. I don't know if they gave him a turnover or whether he played, but off the top of my head, I can't remember him putting the ball really in danger, which has been kind of the big thing about his hot streak. It hasn't even been the explosive plays. It's just that like he's not even getting lucky with no turnovers. He's like legitimately not putting the ball in harm's way. And he was making winning football plays, winning with his legs. That scramble and the little dolphin dive at the end of the game was a
dude,
perfect
that was
example.
hysterical.
Whereas Bo Nix was a loser. Bo Nix made losing quarterback plays. That interception to Jarian Jones. Have you seen like the dots of that play?
No, like the
Like the next
next gen
gen?
stats.
Dude, running back right in front of him, literally in front of him. Easy completion. Cortland Sutton on a slot fade, probably a touchdown. But he locks onto the most unopened guy because he's a go ball merchant and they throw so many back shoulders. And the Jaguars and Jarian Jones had great recognition of that and knew exactly what was coming. And it's the kind of interception. I'm like, how does an NFL quarterback throw that? He literally looks at him the entire time, the least open guy, and still decides to throw it. And then that sack he took on, I think it was 3rd and 3, where BJ Green got technically to like 7 yard sack because he stepped out of bounds before he
Yeah.
threw it. That's one of the worst quarterback plays of 2025.
Mhm.
I mean, that legitimately is a big reason they lost the game. So I thought one team had a quarterback play winning football, one team has a loser quarterback who, frankly, I know that's strong words, but I've never been a Bo Nix fan. The Bo Nix retconning from Denver and from national media has always kind of irked me, and I simply think if you put Bo Nix on like the, let's say, New York Jets, I mean they're killing the guy. They're looking for a new
Yeah,
quarterback. I mean,
for
the
sure.
Broncos have a great ecosystem. They have a really good play caller, really good scheme, supporting cast, etc. And I thought the difference in this game, which should encourage Jaguars fan, is that their quarterback is why they won the game. The difference between the performance of the two passers. And I mean, it's pretty clear, I think, not I think, it's pretty clear who the 7 teams in the AFC are going to be. I know Baltimore's still technically alive. I know the Colts are still technically alive, but it's pretty clear that those spots are going to go to Houston and Pittsburgh. So, I mean, just looking at the 7 AFC quarterbacks, I know the Broncos, they had a lot of comments post game about seeing the Jaguars again. I think the Jaguars should want to see the Broncos again because Bo Nix is pretty clearly the second worst quarterback in this AFC field. And if it wasn't for Aaron Rodgers being like several years past his prime, Bo Nix would be the worst quarterback in this AFC field. And I felt vindicated. I felt like the Jaguars, like he had a very empty calorie game. Like he hit a couple explosive plays against zone coverage, but it was very clear the Jaguars were doing bend, don't break. You
Oh,
could tell on some of the rushes that they were doing a lot of mush rush, and they just didn't want Nix to, run around and do his dumb shit that he normally does each game to find success. And I don't know, it was an impressive game to me by the defense despite the explosive plays. And I just thought the difference between Trevor Lawrence and Bo Nix was just insurmountable.
I've got a perfect empty calorie stat for you, John. Bo Nix finished 7 for 8 for a career high 180 yards on play action passes on Sunday. Uh, he averaged 22.5 yards per attempt on play action. On non-play action attempts, 4.4 yards per attempt. So, yeah, I think that like I was thinking during the second half that I think that like cockiness is kind of Nix's biggest problem, and like you could probably make an argument that that's his biggest strength too, because like certainly you want quarterbacks to like be confident, but I think that like Nix is just like a little bit of a douchebag and like thinks that he's Patrick Mahomes, and it's like you gotta like realize that you're not like the Michael Jordan of the sport and know that like you're like the freaking Steve Kerr of the sport, okay? And like just like work with Sean Payton, even if he is a slime ball, as we all know, and like be a part of the system rather than like the system. And so I definitely agree. I think that the quarterbacks, where's the difference?
What did Bo Nix do to this show? We've got a loser. But
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I agree. He definitely like I said, he reminds me a lot of watching Minshew in 2019. Like he thinks his skill, and I said that on my podcast, and somebody commented and was like, "Well, here's Bo Nix's winning record, like record through 2 seasons, and here's Gardner Minshew's. If you put Bo Nix on those Jaguars teams, I'm pretty sure it looks a lot like Minshew Mania."
Yeah, that was like the whole reason that Minshew Mania was going off is because he had 6 wins as a rookie, like amid like one of the worst rosters in the league. Like that was like Minshew was obviously not franchise quarterback material, but it was still an impressive feat. But yeah, Bo Nix on those Jaguars teams, forget
But
about it,
but
dude.
before we move past the NFL's 23rd best quarterback, the other play I forgot that I thought was a losing play was they did that like reverse like throwback pass to Cortland Sutton. I don't know how that you know what I'm talking about, the one that Buster
Uh,
broke down downfield, broke
Not
up
off the top of my
downfield.
head. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know how that wasn't a walk-in touchdown. Like
Yeah.
that was a beautifully schemed play, and it was a great play by Buster to break it up. But Cortland Sutton had to like rent a 2 bedroom flat to wait for the ball. It was, yeah. I think Trevor, how you want to rank the 7 AFC QBs. I think you could put Trevor anywhere from 4 to like 2. Honestly,
Yeah.
it's very clear though that the Jaguars played the Broncos again. I picked the Jaguars this last weekend. I would pick the Jaguars again and probably by an even bigger score if they played the Broncos again. The Broncos like do have a very legit defense. Like it was weird even with the Jaguars having success and creating explosive plays. I was still impressed by the Broncos defense, like especially in the first half. And I think Trevor had the highest pressure rate of any quarterback this week. And it was weird. It felt like they were getting after Trevor, but it also felt like the offensive line did better than I expected. Is that a fair take?
Yeah, totally. It was weird because like during the first half, I was like, his pressure rate was pretty high, and like it looked like he was getting pressured a decent amount. But I was like, the Jags' offensive line is actually like doing a pretty solid job. I thought that like the Broncos like secondary was doing better than their pass
Yeah,
rush was really,
I
and
agree with
Lawrence
that.
just kind of like had to hold on to the ball. There was like one play, especially the one that where Lawrence rolls out to his left, throws the dart to Parker Washington. When they showed the replay, like Jacoby Myers was wide open on a dig, which should have been Lawrence's first look, and then Washington was actually open on a corner route if Lawrence hadn't hit Myers, and so Lawrence has this tendency, I think, especially in like big crucial games, where like he kind of needs about a quarter of play to like kind of get the juices out of him, and he's just playing a little bit like uptight and not really as freely, and like certainly it's good to see like him able to just after
Yeah,
taking 2 sacks on third downs to start the day, being able to on his next 5 third downs, he went 5 for 5, and all 5 passes were to Parker Washington. And so on third downs in the red zone, he was pretty brilliant. Especially like he did a great job of throwing. I mean, he's been doing this the whole season, but like throwing with getting the ball out in under 2.5 seconds, but still being aggressive downfield. That's kind of a credit not just to his arm to be able to attack any area of the field, but certainly to his brain too. Because I think like we've heard
for
a lot
sure.
of discourse over recent weeks about like how quarterbacks are like have full field kind of reads rather than just doing a half read because of how complex NFL defenses are. Yada yada. Yeah, I know. But like Kirk Cousins had a pretty good like speech about it at the podium
Yeah.
last week, and he was saying that a lot of times he just has to like basically skip reads even before the snap actually happens, just because like he knows he doesn't have time to get to literally every single read in his progression, and that's what we've been seeing from Trevor his whole career, but especially this season is that like sometimes when he skips a read and then he'll end up being wrong and it looks really ugly, but for the most part like he knows when to skip reads and like his superpower is really his brain as much of it is as it is his arm. And so the reason he's able to get the ball out quickly while maintaining a high average depth of target and being able to punish defenses downfield, or even like on the ETN touchdown, that was a good example of like he didn't push the ball downfield because it was a pass that was behind the line of scrimmage, but he was able to like process the play so quickly that he just got the ball into ETN's hands with plenty of time for ETN to kind of like catch it and then recognize the defender in front of him and then make a move on that defender to score. So just want to credit Trevor's processing, I guess, basically.
They wanted that swing to ETN to work so bad. They let it go awful like 3 times before it finally worked. No, I agree with you 100%. I think like Trevor, the Britton Strange touchdowns, I think is a great example to your point. Like he's really underrated as a processor, and he's knowing before the snap where the ball needs to go. Parker Washington's big 64-yard catch, another example. If you look on the backside of that play, or not necessarily the backside, you look on the other side of formation, and they had, a screen call that looked like it probably would have went for like 5 or 6 yards, etc. But he knew, he saw the off coverage. He knew Parker on an out would at least be some free yards. So I agree with you. I thought Trevor, like to me, that was a more impressive game than his 6 touchdown game against the Jets because the Broncos have NFL quality players and not, WFAN radio host on the field on defense. But I think that Liam Coen, as a schemer right now is as hot as Trevor Lawrence is too. I mean, they're meshing together perfectly. Like when Trevor got hot with Doug and them in 2022, they did like a lot of like classic concepts, but it felt like mesh especially like
Yeah.
every like big play. Okay, mesh to Evan Ingram. Like it just feels like they have a more diverse menu this time around. You won't really know, what to expect in terms of a counterpunch. I thought it was interesting to me people keep asking, who is the Jaguars' number one receiver after the Jacoby Myers, extension, etc. Patrick Surtain traveled with BTJ.
hmm
They more or less told BTJ to go run some sprints and occupy Patrick Surtain. Well, they picked on Riley Moss and Jahdae Barron and McLaughlin. That was I think one of the more interesting pieces of that game. Like you saw Surtain on a couple plays move around. Like he covered. It was in the fourth quarter. Parker Washington ran a dig. It would have been like a massive play, but you can see Parker kind of stumbled out of his break. I think
hmm
Patrick Surtain, who also tripped, got a piece of hit like his foot. If he doesn't stumble, he walks right into that pass and he maybe even scores. But I mean, they moved Patrick Surtain in the slot to cover Parker
To
Washington,
cover
which
Parker Washington because he
which,
was just
which
having
is
that good of a
fantastic.
day.
But I think the fact that they were willing to concede, to Parker Washington and to a lesser degree to Jacoby Myers and focus on Brian Thomas Jr. was telling about how important Brian Thomas Jr. and his downfield, ability is to this offense. And yeah, I think they still tried to account for Jacoby. Like to me, their plan on defense was they really kind of flooded the middle of the field with defenders. They especially underneath. But the fact that they put their best defender on Brian Thomas Jr. and the Jaguars had another guy go completely off. I think that's because the Jaguars had a guy worthy of drawing that attention. Like if Brian Thomas Jr. was just a nobody, like they could have put Surtain on Parker Washington after like his first big catch.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's definitely telling. Cohen even said like after the game that they weren't sure whether they were going to have Surtain shadow Brian Thomas or Jacoby Myers. I think if you look at like most receiving like metrics and stats since Myers was acquired by the Jaguars, he would be the team's wide receiver one by stats. He's also probably the team's number one wide receiver in terms of like the best wide receiver in terms of all the nuances and technique and kind of intangibles that you need at the position that we've been going over since he was acquired by the Jaguars. But Brian Thomas remains by far the scariest receiver on the Jaguars. Even if he's not the best, he's certainly not the most consistent, but he's easily the scariest. Just his ability on the perimeter against press, he's like unguardable. So then you want to play off coverage against him, but then that obviously opens up kind of like some easier running lanes underneath. So he's just, it's like very few people can guard him. Obviously, Pat Surtain is one of them, but like then you're dedicating the best player on your team to take away the guy that's like by stats, not even the number one wide receiver on the
Yeah.
Jaguars. And
I
so
I want to say the stat was like Surtain was targeted one time in coverage and Riley Moss was targeted like 14 times. Like that some Broncos fan posted a picture of the game of Riley Moss like sitting on the bench at the end of the game. His jersey has just grass stains all over it. And somebody's like, why does it look like this after every game?
dude, I feel bad for him because I don't think he's like necessarily like amazing, but like it must be kind of tough to like have the job opposite Pat Surtain because like Pat's never getting targeted regardless of like the receiver he's going against. So that's not an easy job. I kind of feel for Riley there, but I mean obviously the Jaguars did not feel for Riley because they definitely went after him. John, one other thing, I feel like did we get balky balled on Sunday? Because like Parker Washington, massive day. Brenton Strange, like I did not think he was going to have that touchdown. He's become so
That
much
best play
more
of
of
his
a
career, right?
yeah, he's become so much more of a receiver than I could have ever possibly imagined. Like I was literally like thinking of like old man Jason Witten, like just the like, anytime you think of a security blanket, you'd think of old man Witten just like sitting in zones like less than 5 yards from the line of scrimmage. But Coen has really unlocked his Strange's receiving game in terms of utilizing him downfield. Each of the past 2 weeks, we saw a cool play where Strange was like lined up as a fullback in I formation, and then it was a play action drop back, and Strange
That
went
was a good
through the
play.
offensive line, through like a guard and a tackle, and ran a post, and there was a completion both times, and so that was a cool play. But then, yeah, like his contested catch for a touchdown. Again, like I did not think he had that in his bag. And then also like Cole Van Lanen gets the start at left tackle. He continues at left tackle. I thought that like once Macari went down at right guard, I was like, are they gonna put Van Lanen back at guard and then Little back at tackle? I just thought that was a possibility. But Van Lanen stuck in at left tackle the whole way. He had a really good game. Nick Bonito said he, quote, played like ass. And I was definitely like a little bit nervous for the Jaguars about that matchup just because I thought that like speed rushers and guys that were basically like freak athletes, but especially guys that could get off the ball in a hurry would pose a disadvantage or a problem for Van Lalen. But he's been awesome, especially in this past game, but over the past couple of weeks, really over the whole season in terms of all the different roles he's filled in. And people aren't really talking about it, John, but Trent Baalke did trade a seventh round pick for him back in 2021. It might have been 2022. So not the worst day for the some Baalke picks, at least the ones that are still on the team, right?
Well, Trent Baalke's talking about it. I guarantee he's somewhere, not letting anybody forget that. Yeah, you pick those guys. If they lose, hey, not his fault. But
Uh-huh.
did you see Tom Telesco went on the Kay Adams show?
Yeah.
It's like people forget he built a good team. Like it's a fair point because I do think like watching this team, it's clear. I mean, just how players have developed this season. I mean,
Hmm.
Parker Washington, how much better he's gotten, how much better Jarian Jones has gotten, how much better Antonio Johnson has gotten, how much, I mean, guys like Matt Dickerson, Cole Van Lannon, etc. Ezra Cleveland, I think, is playing the best he's ever played as a Jag. Like, just how much better players have developed. I think it's clear that coaching was the biggest issue for the Jaguars the last few years over Balky, but Balky is definitely putting in the call from inside the house to, remind people of that. And that's the thing. Like I remember writing a piece when Balky and the Jaguars parted ways, whatever they want to call it, and I was like, he was really misunderstood because he didn't need to be fired because he was just a woeful drafter. He wasn't great. He was about average, I think. He didn't need to be fired because he was horrific in free agency. Again, he wasn't great. He was probably about average. His last class was really bad, but overall probably about average. He had to be fired because nobody wanted to work with him. Yeah, it had nothing to do with his ability to build a roster, but being a general manager is also more than just playing Madden and finding the best overalls, etc. that you can find. Look, James Godstone and Liam Coen have a great relationship. Wow, that's crazy how it actually leads to production, you know. So definitely though, I mean, you're seeing a lot of his players, play well, which does it mean anything? To me, no. To Trent Baalke, I can almost assure you 100%, absolutely. But that is a bulky ball.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone is like how many people are like rooting for a Jaguars Super Bowl harder than Trent Baalke just because he's a Bill Parcells guy, right? Like I just think that like it could kind of help his legacy in that like oh
He's
Bill
no,
Belichick's early Super Bowl teams were
no.
like all with Parcells built
He
rosters. Like I don't
he's
think any of us are going to be saying that, but I think he
no.
would start spreading that rumor of like
I
oh like these are all Balky built teams.
I disagree.
You
I
know?
think it'd be the worst thing that's ever happened in his entire life if they
Oh
won a
yeah.
Super Bowl after firing him.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
I think that. Oh God! Remember when somebody drove a car through the Miller Electric Center?
Yeah.
I wouldn't do that, but I think that would be the level of how upset. Yeah, no, I disagree completely. I actually think that would be the worst thing that's
The
ever
worst thing
happened in
ever.
his
No,
entire
that's
life.
that's fair. Yeah, you easily
I
convinced me.
think you would
You're
hate
right about
that.
that. Um, other notes from the game. I'm glad Jarian Jones got his first interception of the season. He's been playing lights out the past several weeks.
Second, buddy.
Oh, is his second?
Yeah,
When was his first
he
one?
picked off Mills Mafia.
Oh, well,
Like
I
for,
completely
like
forgot
first
about
drive of
that.
the, yeah, first drive of that game because then I retweeted some really stupid Davis Mills tweet and got a guy mad at me when Davis Mills ended up scrambling for a
Right, right,
touchdown.
right.
I
Oh,
I, I refuse to be gaslit. Davis Mills was absolutely horrific when he filled in for CJ Stroud this year. I know they won games. Go look at the numbers. He sucks. Davis Mills sucked. I won't be gaslit on that, and I'm offended that the Jaguars let him win and made me look stupid.
yeah, that's a tough look. But hey, at least you got the wins over Daniel Jones, over Bo Nix. Um, they played the Colts again this week, so it'll be the Philip Rivers show,
Do they
assumingly.
play Rivers? Well, yeah, they're still in it, so I guess they have to play Rivers, don't they?
Yeah, I mean, like Shane Steichen said pretty quickly after their loss to Seahawks that Rivers would be starting in San Francisco on for Monday Night Football. But I haven't heard any, or seen anything in terms of like whether they've announced. I mean, they probably don't even need to like announce a starter at this point. It's probably just Rivers going forward.
I I actually think Rivers is a tougher draw than like going into the Daniel Jones matchup than I thought Daniel Jones was. Like I know Daniel Jones is having a good year, but I kind of was just like, I think he's gonna do something stupid. And he did. That Devin Lloyd interception was absolutely woeful.
Yeah,
Philip Rivers like last night, like he for a 44-year-old, like obviously he can't throw it past like 20 yards. I think somebody said last night one of his passes got recorded by Next Gen as like at like 12 and a half miles per hour or something like that. And he can't move, but so much of the quarterback position is just knowing where to go with the ball and getting the ball out of your hands quickly, and he does that. And I feel like against the Jaguars too, I I feel like there's no point in blitzing Philip Rivers because he is not holding on to that ball. You're just wasting a body trying to get there. You might as well just put 11 guys in
yeah,
coverage. Like, do you remember that Matt Ryan game in 2022 when the Jags lost to them on the road? When it was literally just every play he was dinking and dunking, and he just dinked and dunked his way down the field every single drive.
yeah.
That's how I could see Rivers playing against them next week. So it'll be an interesting game. I thought Campanelli's defense, like I said. The biggest issue is definitely the explosive plays. I don't have any diagnosis for the big plays they gave up in the passing game. It just I don't know. It seems like when you run so much zone coverage, eventually you're going to get hit with a zone beater now and then. It's just
Yeah.
how much you can stiffen the red zone. I thought obviously I thought they tackled really well in the first half. The second half, like that RJ Harvey touchdown was abysmal tackling, and they had a few other instances of it. But I thought overall, Campanella, like you look at the important downs, third down, fourth down, they took it to the Broncos. And I thought, especially for their mush rush strategy, they were able to get some heat on him. I mean, Trayvon Walker rushing from the inside. And they do a lot of those like load fronts where they'll put three linemen on like one side of the offensive line and then just one end on the other side. That's to, draw more one-on-one so they can't really slide the protection over.
Mhm.
I think putting Trayvon inside has been absolutely stellar, for him. I mean, with one hand, he was absolutely crushing, guys. Like get like I do a game balls article after every game, and I gave it to Trayvon on defense this week. He had I
Yeah.
think 5 pressures, like an 18 percent pressure rate. Had 3 quarterback hits. I think obviously had the tackle for loss. In my opinion, they stopped the Broncos on that fourth down that Liam Coen and them challenged. They to me, I still wouldn't have challenged it because I don't know when's the last time anybody's ever won a challenge, like when they're challenging, like if somebody got to the line or not. But at
Mm.
least looking at it live and then again on the all 22, I thought the Jaguars stopped them before the first down. Trayvon was a huge part. I mean, it would have been third week in a row he made a fourth down, stuff, and he
Yeah.
essentially, I mean, he
And like a
forced the
dominant
Broncos
stuff too. Not just like
a
he was
100%, a
involved with the
100%.
tackle, like he blew all three plays up.
No, 100%. That was like his tackle for loss that counted, and RJ Harvey on third down was major too because it was clear the Broncos were in like 4 down territory and that they were, running it to try to get a yard, and then they're probably going to quarterback sneak. He makes them lose a couple yards, and they settle for a field goal to make it 10-7. I mean, that's a completely different game if the Broncos end up making it 14-7 instead of 10-7.
Absolutely, yeah. Trayvon Walker definitely deserves that shout out. I'm glad you brought him up. I think the Jaguars, my last note before we get out of here is that they have a little bit of a nose tackle problem. I've definitely been one of the loudest supporters of Devon Hamilton over the years, especially in recent years as he's kind of like fought back from his major back injury. But he didn't start on Sunday. I don't know. I don't know how many games he's actually started this season, but he didn't start on Sunday. And Austin Johnson was the one tech for the Jaguars, and the Broncos really went after him in the first drive or two by like having the running back kind of like flip which side he was on in the backfield, like of the quarterback, and kind of like change the front side and or the back side and sorry, the weak side and the strong side of the runs and the formation. So they're kind of attacking Austin Johnson. And so fortunately, like Harvey had the big touchdown run. Their other back, McCaughlin or whatever his name is, I think had one big run. But generally, they were able to bottle up the run game and like kind of fix that. But just going forward, I feel like a like really stout nose tackle is like will it take for this Jaguars defense from like the Jaguars run defense at least from like arguably best in the league to like one of the best run defenses of the decade.
Yeah, I don't know really what is the rhyme and logic with how they start guys defense. I mean, they started Matt Dickerson the week before over
Yeah.
Eric Armstead. I really don't know if it means anything at all or if it's just like how they want to do the rotation. But I agree. I think their biggest need going into this offseason is finding a difference maker inside. And that you can say that though for like probably 20 plus teams. It's a lot easier said than done, but it's clear to me why they were interested in Quentin Williams, at the trade deadline. I mean, I think they're aware and they're cognizant of the need. It's just you can't fill every need every, offseason. The Mason Smith development just doesn't look like it's kind of, you know, taken. So they need to find somebody inside in the offseason, whether that's free agency, whether that's trade, whether that's drafting somebody who can make an impact as a rookie. But that I think is the biggest need for that defense. Just, because they clearly have two really productive ends. So just finding another guy who can kind of blow things up in the middle.
All right, that'll do it for this episode. John, thank you so much for being here. We'll probably have you back on in about 2 weeks. So Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy Hanukkah. Happy Kwanzaa. I'll be back before the new year, so I'll wish you a happy new year at that point. But happy holidays to everyone. Happy holidays to you, John. Hope everyone is able to just chill out, spend time with family, and drink a lot of eggnog, watch Christmas Vacation. Maybe that'll just be me. But all right, till next time, guys. Thank you very much. Adios.